My next guest is, how do I say this? He has a myriad of skill sets, right? It's kind of like the dude from Taken. Like I have a lot of, I have a number of skill sets, and I like to put them into practice. But I met Brother Michael in the space of agriculture, right? And what's amazing about his experience is that if you engage with him specifically as a farmer and then like on growing things, you'll get a particular lane of information and experience. But if you start to peel back the layers of the onion, right, you'll find, this is a brother that has repatriated to the continent, has lived in the space of Hebrew Israelite space, has been blessed, I would say, to work on his family's intergenerationally owned land, right? And even has a street name. If you go to his farm, that says Carter Lane. And I thought that was amazing. And I was like, hold on, man. I had to take a selfie. I was like, yo, I'm on Michael Carter's farm, and the street name is named after his family. Like that's, I don't know, that's just magnificent. On top of this, brother is also small farm outreach at Virginia State University, right? He's also in the black philanthropy space as the founder of Africulture, like, and his youngins, his progeny are business owners and the purveyors of Carter Seeds, right? So I want y'all to give it up for my good friend and comrade, Michael Carter Jr. Is that good? Okay. I tried. You know what I'm saying? I'll bill you. So listen, Black Land Matters. There's a lot to be said about black farmers. It's a lot to be said about farmers, period, right? We can have a whole conversation about small farmers and the struggles that farmers face. But there's a whole nother conversation to be had about black farmers. So to start this conversation off, can you help those in the room understand why we need to be focused deliberately and intentionally around supporting African farmers of African ancestry in this country? Like, why is that important?
It's important more so because of this give honor and praise to ancestors and all the individuals who came before me. It's important because our food is our food. It's our sustenance. And those who provide your food ultimately take care of you. Historically, other communities really haven't supported us. If there's anything that hits the fan, the first thing that happens is they support their own. And you don't have any black farmers or farmers of African descent to consider or think about or purchase from. When something happens, you have to depend on others. My family farm is surrounded by black farmers. So we depend upon each other. Good times, bad times, etc. So it's kind of security. People talk about food security. What does that really? How do you define that for your community, for you personally? If you're not looking at who grows your food, what they grow, how they grow, and then how you have access to it, how do you get it, how do you support them, how do you keep them growing? Many times in a lot of our communities, we put a very low value on food, especially on farmers and fresh produce. And we also eat things that are just not part of our dietary lexicon. We have a very colonialized diet. And that colonialized diet really affects our ultimate health because what we're consuming is not giving us the sustenance for our particular genetic structure. So these are all things that are part and parcel because as much as you want to support black farmers, you want to get out there with the black farmers. We're out there in the vitamin D every day. The vitamin in the sunshine.
Okay.
That sunshine element is tremendously important for our hormonal development. So between May to September, you should be getting, speak louder, I'm sorry, my bad. between May and September, you should be out in the sun at least 60% of the day. You know, getting that vitamin D, that sunshine, ultimately helping your hormones trigger properly to give you better health and better life. And the best way to do that is on land. My son, one of my sons, they just took his shoes off. That's another thing we have to do is get back to grounding, earthing. The earth is our mother. And if most of us who've had mothers in this plane right now, we do touch our mothers. For those of us who've lost our mothers in this plane, you would give anything to touch her again. You know, so our Mother Earth, we should always be in constant touch and communication with her and her being the trees, the grass, all of those things, the June bugs, the flies. Maybe not the flies, maybe not the mosquitoes either, but the others.
So, tell us a little bit about your work. Like, what is it that you do? Like, you got, I gave you kind of like a brief overview, like bio-wise, but on a day-to-day, what does a day look like for Michael Carter Jr.?
What do I do? It varies quite a bit day to day. I homeschool at least one of my sons right now, so that's usually starting off with him. And then I work on behalf of Black farmers. So one of the big things I do is try to provide markets for Black farmers, and that's through stores, through communities, through distributors. So I'm on my phone, my laptop quite a bit, sending emails, communicating, talking to them. I work as kind of extension for farmers. In that extension process, I'm constantly receiving phone calls, text, emails, asking about different things, looking for markets, looking for help with controlling deer or controlling pests and things like that. And then finally, probably in the evening, I make it to my farm. Maybe.
After everything else.
After everything else, yeah. That's really what I need to really focus on. And I call myself a grant farmer. So I do a lot of writing for grants because unfortunately, the reality of being a farmer is it's tough to make enough income to really support yourself. So grants allow me to support myself and my family without actually being on the farm full time. So we use our farm more as a teaching and educational tool. So our farm is a tool more so than it is our livelihood. And then I fight with my uncle on the farm when I get there.
So tell me a little bit about that piece though of the land that you own. So, you know, from what I've gathered, this farm has been in your family for 5, 6 generations.
I'm the 5th generation.
5th generation. Why was it important for you to reconnect with your family's land? Right? What brought you to that point? I mean, yeah. I don't want to be presumptuous and say, well, you know, I felt like, you know, a driving passion deep in my heart. Like, I mean, that's something I would say for the press, right? Well,
I won't say that.
What was it that like made you want to farm, and like what brought you back to your family's land to like continue that legacy?
I dare say, coming back here from 5 years living in Ghana, West Africa, in July of 2017. And I came back to the land and they had a going away party for me at the farm. And the land just kind of spoke to me and said, you need to come back and tell this story. I initially thought it was going to be the story of most of my West African experience, but I was sadly mistaken. And once I got involved and learned more of the history of our family, our involvement in the area, the community, our involvement in regional and national policy and influence, I felt it was definitely my calling to come back. And my father kind of just kept pushing me to come on back and to kind of take over the farm. So my family farm is 150 acres, purchased on November 5th, 1910. So we're approaching 112 years of it being in the family. Right next to us is the first Black-owned woman winery, which is another 120 acres. Right next to us, on that other side, well, not meaning this is the Turo family who own at least 350 acres. We have a land property where my father was born. It's hopefully going up for sale soon. We're trying to acquire it as well. So the understanding that Black land ownership and land ownership in general is power and influence beyond just it's much more power and influence than most people give it credit for. And then once you can figure out how to earn income from it, it's a good thing. But also for children, for your next generation, your next legacy, having land. That land was purchased for $722.05 in 1910. You know, now it's probably roughly about $2 million worth of property. And there's no other investment you could have made in 1910. You couldn't have bought a Model T or Air Jordan Mickens, whoever that. You couldn't have bought anything back then. Yeah, Henry Fords. Yeah, the Henry Fords. Yeah, you couldn't have bought anything back then that would appreciate it in that type of value. And it was my family survived the depression through that. With that, we almost lost the land. My great grandmother, utilized that land as the GI Bill for her sons. They couldn't get any benefits after serving in World War II, but they could come home and have land that they could build on and support their families. So it was always something we did, and I would not allow that to stop on my watch. That's what really brought me back and inspired me. Because when I was in West Africa, I could lease land, but I couldn't own it. So the family clan that we purchased land from, after 50 years, after 100 years, it goes back to the families. And they be plotting. Counting your years. I got 3 more years left in this mine. So. Exactly.
So, tell us a little bit about what are some ways that you can make money off your land? I mean, there's a lot of different contexts for this, like in a lot of situations that might vary. But say, for instance, I acquired, or my grandma passed away and left me 80 acres. Like, what would I do? What could I do, outside of farming, right? So if I'm living in Churchill, Richmond, and I don't plan on moving to Amelia County, right? What can I do with those 80 acres that would benefit my family in the future, or now and into the future?
The first thing I'd always encourage anybody to do is, one, get a survey, know how much you have, get a topographical reading of it to understand where the water is, if there's any water, and all that kind of thing. The second thing is plant trees. You can plant fruit trees, where you can get fruit from that. You can plant, let's say, like a loblolly pine or Virginia pine or pulpwood. You can plant walnuts, cherries, oaks, other hardwoods. The hardwoods give you a higher value in terms of when you cut them. Eventually, we have about maybe 30 or 40 walnuts on our property that I'm sure my grandfather, maybe my great-grandfather planted. And we cut those down now. We would have a nice little nest egg.
So what is called agroforestry?
Agroforestry. Yeah. Next thing would be putting the land in conservation easement is another option, where you get a check from whatever conservation agency provides the easement for you not to develop it into homes and other things. The land is a limited resource, right, and there are resources there to conserve land, especially farmland. You have between Virginia Outdoors Foundation, Virginia Historical Society, NRCS, National Resource Conservation Services. They offer conservation easements, and those are usually enough to at least generate enough income to pay the taxes on the land. So that at least covers that. And then if anyone does come and tries to buy the land and take it out of conservation easement, they have to pay the back taxes on it. So that can discourage individuals from coming in and trying to buy you out. Or if they do, they have to step the price up.
So don't sell grandma's land.
Do not sell your grandmama, granddaddy, uncle, auntie's land ever. That's the goal. That's worth it. Because you can't talk about generational wealth or any type of wealth without land. There's no wealthy individual who doesn't really own land. You hear about the Bill Gates and the Ted Turner and all them buying land. The reason why they buy land is because of it's depreciating value. 2, it's tax benefits. When I apply for my taxes, I apply for Schedule F. Schedule F gives you a whole different list of tax breaks in terms of incentives, in terms of write-offs that your standard even business doesn't have. So there's a lot of benefits in land ownership. and then applying for a farm number. That should be the first thing to do. No matter if you're growing anything, if you have trees on your land, your farm number. You know, if you have some bees on your land, put a hive there. You gotta take care of it. Just put one there. Your farm. You know, these are rights of a citizen of this country. You know, you got to be able to get those benefits. The best way to do that is first with the farm number, come up with a plan. I can help you out with a plan if you need one, and plant some trees. If you don't plan on doing nothing else with the land. And then eventually, as you get more into it, you can start planting vegetables, planting fruit trees, bushes, you know, berries, etc.
So this is a interesting conversation for us because we're both on the board for the Central Virginia Agrarian Commons, where Callie Walker has decided to donate 80 acres to the Central Virginia Agrarian Commons for the development of, for the redistribution of land into Black hands. What are some techniques and strategies, like practical reparations, that you can imagine, like in this work as a farmer? Like, you know, we both live in this space where all this dialogue about racial equity exists, right? We experiencing some real things that are happening that looks like individuals making reparations to Black communities for, you know, years of historical wrong. What are some other strategies, some other things that you would like to see happen that would advance not equity, power for Black community?
The first thing would have to be, because Black people can't give reparations to themselves. You know, this is not a practical notion. So for any non-Black people out there who've done those things, the first thing I would always encourage is add this to your will. You got some land, you got some property, write this into the will. Piss off your children, your grandchildren, or not even piss them off. Really provide them. They got enough. Give us a little extra. Most wealth is transferred. You know, most wealth is transferred after death. Nobody can complain about it. Nobody can challenge it. Granddaddy, grandma, mom, and daddy said this organization gets this 6 acres of land, this 12 acres of land, this $5 or $6, $10,000. It makes a difference in the long run as far as that goes. The next option in terms of reparations is what I would refer to as the Black farmer tax. Historically, we've not supported Black farmers. The Black church hasn't supported Black farmers since integration. The larger Black community hasn't supported Black farmers since integration. Pay more for your food. You know, pay another $1, another $2. Provide a tip to Black farmers if you support them. If you patronize them. I'm encouraging that with the institutional organizations I work with, like Aramark, like UVA Dining, 4P Foods, and a couple other restaurants, to pay more for the food when they buy it from Black farmers. That allows them to get retail costs or retail price with wholesale value. That makes a huge difference for our farmers. The next thing would be increase the value and your perception of what food is and isn't. Because if we don't increase the value of what we're eating, we're not going to pay for more. You know, this thing here, people will flip out over. You know, and it's a certain value that's associated with this. I've never taken a bite of this. I lived for 20 years without ever even operating one. I lived. There's a whole generation of folks who live without this. Show me a generation of folks who live without food. It doesn't happen. You know, we've got to reassess what we place our values upon and how much value we put on it. You know, shoes, clothes, phones, cars, they're all stuff. Food is essential. Food and water is life. And if you're not putting a higher value on what's giving you life, you're not going to necessarily always value or have your life to really appreciate. A lot of us are dealing with things with healthcare challenges in our community, and it's because we put a lot more value on how we look when we're eating versus what we're eating. And that's how, you know, we've got to work, and that's part of our own reparation to ourselves. You know, reparation means repair. We've got to start preparing our outlook toward what we're eating. And we're developing this concept at our farm called eating for your ethnic type, where we're growing a lot more African vegetables. Because again, as I stated earlier, our plates are colonized. So we're eating broccoli, cauliflower, kale, collards, spinach, lettuce, cucumbers. Most of these crops originated in Europe. This time of year, with the exception of maybe cucumbers and tomatoes, none of those other crops grow during the summertime. So they're not designed for optical instruction. Most non-African, non-tropical people right now are hot. They were waiting for the cold season to come in. It's also when they find the peppers, the okras, all the things that come from usually our genetic home, we don't necessarily eat. Say it again. Vegetables. Yeah, we grow some of those too. But putting those things back into our diet is going to make us healthier, and I really think assists us in appreciating the value of what we have. And that's one of the things we're doing as well, is helping other farmers grow those things. And then we're working with UVA and a couple other partners to develop recipes around it, so that we have an immediate market for those goods. And from there, we'll be able to hopefully popularize it and make it a little more hip, a little more in to eat. Culturally appropriate vegetables are generally considered like collard greens and I think Kool-Aid, the Kool-Aid plant.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's like your genetic makeup would have a proclivity to foods that were or are like a part of your ancestors ate, right? Because their genetics were activated based off of these particular types of foods, and we're like 7 generations, 8, yeah, give or take here. So we for the last 400 years, right?
11 to 14 generations in this.
11, 14 generations. So there's been an interruption, and like people of African ancestry here as a result of slave trade colonization from the foods that were activated the genetics of.
I wouldn't say an interruption. Again, some of the things we consume, we don't realize that it has an African origin. So the American agricultural industry, all the things we've read about in our history books was 1611, 1610 to now, 90% of them are African crops. So cotton is an African crop. Dryland rice is an African crop. Sugarcane, yeah, maybe African, Caribbean, but African, at least a tropical crop. Indigo was an African crop. Most of our dandelion, African crop. So most of our grandmothers and great-grandmothers, they didn't have access to the grocery stores, to Paris Teeters, to particularly Woodleys, whatever. They ate a lot of the herbs that were brought here by our ancestors and modified themselves for this environment. I call them genetically modified African plants. So you'll find a amaranth, but then you also find a pigweed. Same thing, cousins, they just, you'll find a horse nettle and you'll find a bone. There's so many ones you see just in the natural environment here that are almost identical to what I saw in West Africa. And they've survived, and we just have taken them out of our dietary lexicon. So we don't consume them. We don't understand what they are because they're not lettuce, tomato, spinach, cauliflower, broccoli, collards, etc. So, really reimagining and reopening our eyes to what those crops are, and that's another thing we teach the farmers, kind of helping people identify those things. Because a lot of times we're running around, we're going to an herbalist, etc., but where are those herbs coming from? Usually from Europe. And when I'm in West Africa, I see none of those herbs. When I go to the herbalist in West Africa, they use none of those herbs. None of them. They just, right? There's a whole litany of herbs, crops that we're just ignorant to that could fix a lot of the ailments that we suffer from in a whole bunch of different ways. They said the plants are supposed to be for the healing of the nations, and we're missing the ones that can heal our nation and our communities.
So I got one more question because we're kind of behind, but we're right on time. When you say that you're a nonprofit farmer,
Grant farmer.
Grant farmer.
I'm not a profit. I do make profit.
You're into profits? Yeah, me too. I like the monies. When you say you're a grant farmer, like what are some ways that how are you making that work? Like, what is working? You know, because I think this is important because I mean if I take your definition, I'm a grain farmer as well. You know what I mean? I grow vegetables and I sell them, but if I relied on the selling of vegetables, then I'd be yeah. Thankfully, yeah. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. So, for folks that are trying to enter into this space, like let's be real and like talk about like okay, what are some strategies that folks can utilize in order to enter into an ag space as a black person, brown person that can make sense, right? Where they can serve their community while at the same time meet their own need resources wise. What would you tell an aspiring young man that came off the street and said, "Hey man, I want to farm, man. I got this. I got the bug, man. I see what you're doing, man. It's amazing, man. I love it. I think it's amazing. Yo, you got any tips for me?" Like, what would you say to that young 22-year-old that's all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed without killing his dreams?
I'm up to his dreams. Start small.
Check.
If you're starting out, you got a full-time or even a part-time job. Your first plot of land that you're working shouldn't probably be more than or bigger than this stage. Start real small because it can be overwhelming when you're growing things and weeds start taking over, or there's a pest or a pestilence that comes in and destroys all your crop. It destroys your ego, your pride, your motivation. So start small, prepare for failure. There's not a farmer I know that hasn't failed in some crop. Consistently. I watched my uncle grow potatoes the last 3-4 seasons. He got like 8 potatoes. And he keeps going at it. I'm like, hey, keep at it.
Yeah.
It's gonna constantly do that. Don't be afraid to start inside.
Sure.
A lot of us may not have the land space to do so. I highly encourage things like microgreens. Microgreens are super easy to grow. They can be grown inside. They grow in about 2 weeks. So instead of waiting for 6 weeks, 8 weeks for some kale, some collards, whatever you're growing to actually grow, microgreens grow. Bam! You can use rock wool as opposed to the standard soil medium or any type of artificial medium, and they hold very well. I can give you the whole process about how to do that aspect of it. They sell very well and they sell quick. You can sell them to restaurants, you can sell them to local folks. Get your sales pitch together. That should be, as a farmer that's trying to do something commercially, you are a salesperson, a business person. So get your sales pitch together. Also get your story together. Your story is the most valuable thing that you're going to have as far as selling yourself to the public. My story gets me in magazines. It ain't my crops. My crops make me sad. I'm not being real. It's like, I'm like, I should have been here yesterday or the day before yesterday, or at least more than once this week. But my story is captivating enough to attract attention. And just like, as I say, just like a-holes, everybody has one. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody can explain their family history. And a lot of times as people of African descent, we don't always put a value on our family history because it's common to us. I didn't put a value on mine. And, you leave out the bad parts and give the good parts. All of us can remember, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. George Washington could never tell a lie. He did chop down a cherry tree or whatever. You paint the picture yourself of your family. You don't let others do that for you, or not even you. What you experience doesn't matter. I can give you stories upon stories about my family that will make you cry or make you least like, but most of us can do that. But I chose to tell it from a different vantage point, the heroic side. So instead of talking about my grandfather's drinking, which is all I saw, I tell about his service in World War II and his role in World War II of burying soldiers that led to the drinking. So, I don't want to say sell the trauma, but I definitely expose it because I didn't know it. And it helps other folks put their family in perspective about what they're selling and what they're doing and providing a certain honor that I think all of our ancestors need. No matter what the situation has been with our family, we have to honor them. Without them, we wouldn't be here. And, honoring them in a way that's feasible, that's understandable, that's attainable, that's not exploitive, but gives them honor, gives them praise, gives them reverence.
I already got you. I already
Small
got me
other
one
things you
right
can
here.
do. The
I
little
got you with two.
seedling saplings.
Come here.
Another,
You got
you
two
know,
hands.
don't need a
No,
lot of
I
space.
got one.
You don't need a lot of land.
I got two.
You
You
just
got
need a rack,
one.
a farm store or something, 3 or 4 racks with some water and some heating pads, and you could do a small business. But again, start small. If you don't, you know, that's the first thing I would tell anybody: start small. Get registered with the FSA. Contact me. Contact you. Contact folks who've been around. Get you a nice farm mentor, somebody that can guide you, as well as a business mentor, somebody who can motivate you, help you see the things that you can't. Because a lot of times, if you're in the field, if you're in the, you know, in your field all the time, you cannot see a lot of the other things. You know, you may come to the market or be selling it with a frown on your face consistently. You think you're smiling, but you've been up since yesterday. You ain't smiling. So, you know, all those things, you know, things that we can do together in terms of, you know, working smarter, not harder. And then, you know, the community has to embrace us. You know, we have homework to do as far as our community. We have to make sure we're constantly looking to spend money with our farmers, as well as other businesses in our community, but definitely our farmers. Those are the ones that feed us. And if you have a business, if you have corporate dollars for your job, if you have church dollars, look for black farmers to support, to buy from. You know, what's it, Food Lion or Giant or Kroger's, Harris Teeter doesn't need any more of your money. They can, you know, they ain't gonna miss you not buying that chicken from them. And there's so many farmers around us who are looking for more customers. Yeah.
So yeah, well, how can people get in contact with you? What's next? What you got coming up next? Yeah, that people should be noting and marking their calendars for. What are you working on, and then how can people get in contact with you or in those initiatives?
What's next? We have a conference coming up in November 4th through the 6th, right here in Richmond, Trinity Life Center, the Real Conference. Deron Chavis and myself are putting on a conference for small farmers. I did focus on black farmers to kind of, you know, sit down, hang heads, develop strategy, as well as workshops and the like. If you're a new and beginning farmer, if you're interested in doing any type of farming, come to that. It'll be free for anybody that wants to come out for the most part. What's next right now, we're about to kind of put it in neutral. We're going into the cooler season and develop strategies to develop more opportunities for farmers. And then we're just planning for 2023. They can get in contact with me on Instagram, Carter Farms VA, Facebook is Carter Specialty Farms, email is carterfarmsva@gmail.com.
Any last thoughts you want to share before we transition?
And don't sell your grandmama land.
Don't sell your grandma's land. Right?
You know,
So that's gonna be.
and if you do sell it to me.
boom, boom.
You know. I'm just gonna be honest. We'll come to you. My people will. We have the resources, so we can definitely come and take care of you.
Yeah.
And we'll give you the option to buy it back when you come back to your senses.
Let's go. Let's go.
All right. But you know, we need more land in our hands. Land in this country is power. I lived in Washington D.C. for a number of years, and I'm upset I sold my house. You know, 20 years ago. And it's like, you know, land never goes down or decreases in value. And if it does, it'll shoot back up. I bought during, I guess, the end of the cracker epidemic. You know, land was cheap. Now I can't. I can't buy windows. It's just, you know, so we've got to definitely have a much more strategic plan about how we approach land. It's not just land. It's your bank. And if you don't invest in your bank, you know, we're not going to have much of anything to come back to. That's right. Land is power.
Black land matters. Y'all give it up for Michael Carter Jr. All right. Yeah. So listen, we're gonna give us a few minutes to transition to our next talk. Up next we got a dialogue with Ron Finley, the gangster gardener, all the way from Los Angeles, here in Richmond, Virginia. Give us a few minutes. We're gonna transition into our next thing. I need to get some water. I hope y'all enjoying Happily Natural Day 19 in Richmond, Virginia. Yes, it.